already, Long Island has quite a lot of freight service. From the jam-packed streets of Brooklyn to the country farms out east, the New York and Atlantic definitely covers a lot of trackage on Long Island. Even before the New York and Atlantic, the Long Island Railroad covered most of the freight service well on Long Island. Before giving up freight service in 1997, the Long Island Railroad would try something that no one could have ever expected. And in this video, we're going to be looking at just that, the time that the Long Island Railroad tried to do intermodal service. In the late 80s, intermodal service started to become very popular. Almost every Class 1 railroad was implementing new ways to get intermodal trains onto their lines. One of those railroads was the Long Island Railroad. They were looking at ways to implement new freight service onto the island, and intermodal service was practically perfect. However, there were a few problems. The major problem was that Long Island was never intended for heavy freight service. Another problem was that well cars, the traditional style of intermodal trains, could not fit on tracks with a third rail. So the Long Island Railroad had to think outside of the box, and they did exactly that. In 1988, the Long Island Railroad placed an order for some new bogie cars that could work on their tracks with no problem. The bogies would start their journey at Greenville, New Jersey via the New York Cross Harbor Railroad. From there, they would be shipped across the bay, and the Long Island Railroad would pick them up at Bay Ridge, which is where the New York Cross Harbor Railroad went to on the New York side, and would take them to various destinations like Pine Lawn and Hempstead on the Central Branch. The bogies would arrive in early 1988. Now we're going to take a look at the service history of the bogies on Long Island. The bogies would make their first run in July of 1988, the first customer being Town of Hempstead Incinerator in Garden City, New York. From there, trucks loaded with trash would be shipped on the bogies to Fresh Pond Yard. Meanwhile, there was another industry coming up, that industry being multimodal in New Jersey. For deliveries to multimodal, trucks would be loaded at Pine Lawn Yard, a short rail yard near Pine Lawn train station. From there, the trucks would be on regular road freights to Bay Ridge, Brooklyn. From there, they would be interchanged with the New York Cross Harbor Railroad and shipped across the river to Greenville, New Jersey, where they would be unloaded and delivered to multimodal. Pine Lawn Yard was the only intermodal yard on Long Island, but that was except for Garden City Team Yard, which wasn't really an intermodal yard, but it kind of was. Anyway, another big customer wanted their freight shipped to Pine Lawn Yard. And that customer was the United States Postal Service. There isn't any information about delivering to the United States Postal Service, so this is my best bet. Croxton Yard is an intermodal yard in North Jersey that is occupied by NS. Originally, it was occupied by Conrail. Many piggyback trains would go to Croxton every day. My guess is that a short piggyback train would go up the Northern Docks branch to Greenville, New Jersey. From there, it would be interchanged with the New York Cross Harbor Railway, which would deliver it over the river to Bay Ridge, where the Long Island Railroad would pick it up and deliver it to Pine Lawn Yard. The United States Postal Service would remain a customer until one of their cars was set on fire at the interchange point in Brooklyn. The last of the four customers to join the intermodal lineup was Claire Rose Beer Distributors. For deliveries to Claire Rose, it would probably be the same thing as deliveries to USPS, but instead of trucks of mail, there would be trucks of beer. It seemed like smooth sailing for the bogies until it just stopped. The bogies had a handful of problems themselves. Those problems include that they kept constantly derailing, they had a 20-mile-per-hour speed limit, and that they could have a maximum of 15 bogies per train. The Long Island Railroad kept finding new ways to make the bogies better, but it just wouldn't work. The bogies would make their last run in December of 1991 to Claire Rose Beer Distributor, the last of the four industries to still run with intermodal service. Now let's take a look at what's left of the bogies. After their final run, the bogies would be transported to a few different spots for resting. Those spots were Yard A in Long Island City and Fresh Pond Yard in Queens. In 2003, the bogies in Fresh Pond Yard were moved up to the abandoned Montauk Cutoff. Also in 2007, when the East Side Access Project started, the cars at Yard A needed to be moved up to the Montauk Cutoff because Yard A would be removed. Another cut of bogies was located up at Hicksville. The cuts in Long Island City and Hicksville were both demolished in 2017. Now let's take a look at the fate of the intermodal towers. The tower in Garden City was most likely demolished after multimodal and Town of Hempstead Incinerator left there. The site of the Garden City Tower is now a Long Island Railroad truck facility. As of the unloader in Greenville, it was demolished in 2004. As of the tower in Pine Lawn, it was demolished sometime between 2009 and 2011. Pine Lawn Yard is now Coastal Distribution, a recycling company that is regularly served by the New York and Atlantic Railway. Now, let's go to the conclusion. So, what's the moral of today's video? The moral is that even if a problem may look challenging, it's always overcomable. We learned that thanks to the Long Island Railroad. The Long Island Railroad wanted to do intermodal service, but because of certain restrictions, they couldn't. But that didn't stop them. They found a way to do it. These videos take me a lot of time, so I would really appreciate it if you would like and subscribe. If you don't, that's totally fine. Anyway, goodbye.